good morning, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Jen, and joining me in the studio are not only these fishy friends right here, but my colleague Sarah, who's actually showcasing everything behind me, from these fish to what we will be talking about today, which are marine meadows or underwater seagrass beds, which I'm very excited to talk to all of you about. Now, if you're like, Jen, I too am really excited to share and talk to you about underwater meadows or seagrass beds or however you want to call them. Excellent. We would love to hear from you. You can go on ahead and text us if you're like, I need to tell you the seagrass fact now. Always welcome for those sorts of texts. Go on ahead and you can reach us at 562-951 183 or 562-286-1838. Aside from that, you're always welcome to email us if that's a little easier for you. Maybe there's the Marine Meadows poem that you want to share or a haiku that you're interested in sharing. We'd love to hear those things too. Go on ahead and email us at live@lbaop.org. Questions are welcome too. All right, friends. So I went ahead and am within one of our aquarium exhibits right now, which is our Blue Cavern exhibit. Off the California coast, I feel like one of the things that people kind of think about is actually one of the rare seaweed varieties that we have here, which is this giant kelp. And you can see it's illuminated by our sun skylight right up here. And so here we can go on ahead and get a chance to really see kind of what, at least in my head, I kind of imagine as like the perfect ocean environment, right? Maybe for you it might be coral reefs. Maybe for others it might be rocky reefs or sandy bottoms, right? There are so many wonderful habitats in the ocean, and one that I'm really excited, as I mentioned, to talk to you about looks a little bit different than this one right here, right? Here, what are some things that you kind of naturally notice about our ocean environment, or a kelp forest, I should say? Well, I know for me, some things that I notice is that all of the seaweed right here is actually really tall, right? It's not really short. It's all tall and it's growing really high up. And so I think that's a really kind of unique feature of our kelp forest habitat or home for many of these animals, which may be something that you also notice. By the way, friends, anytime you want to share, you're welcome to send a text on in. Or if you have another person in the room with you, you're welcome to go on ahead and let them know. Talk to a friend, talk to your pet bird, cat, worm perhaps. Whatever you happen to have available at home, right? Always a good time talking about ocean animals with my two cats there. All right. So if you're seeing lots of fish, yes, right? We're seeing lots of fish that are kind of moving in and around the seaweed. Some of them are kind of like small to medium size, but do you see what I see? That big one right there, right? That's a giant sea bass that is coming our way. Wow. And those fish are all moving out of the way for this beautiful, gentle giant right here, who always loves really kind of having the spotlight, our giant sea bass. So this is kind of what I think about, when I think about the ocean. Now, some things that people may not think about are those seagrass beds. So we're going to pretend and we're going to get ourselves into that seagrass bed mindset. Maybe you're already there too. What do you imagine when you think about marine meadows or seagrasses? What image kind of comes to your mind? Does it match what we're about to show you back here? Take a minute to think about that. For me, if I think about a meadow, maybe one that's on land, right? Or like a prairie, I'm thinking about a lot of grass, right? A lot of kind of like flat, smaller grasses. I'm not really thinking of any kind of like large trees. I'm thinking there's a lot of activity or a lot of animals that are living in and around the grass. When I think of prairies or meadows, I'm also thinking that maybe a lot of them are underground. Now, it may be kind of tricky in the ocean to have underground, but what about marine meadows? Do you think those animals also kind of hang around just in the seagrass? Let's see if we can take a look. See if what you're kind of thinking kind of matches what we have here. I'll step off the screen so you can get a really good view. Wow. Is this kind of what you're thinking? Maybe, maybe not. That's okay either way, right? And so here we're almost like as if we're peeking inside the grass, right? Like we're kind of going through, we're peeking into the grass right here. So it's something that's like really shallow that we're seeing. Oh wow, that water. Whoa! Right? So here we go on ahead, and we have all of our seagrass that's swaying back and forth. And look, we're getting a chance to see some fish too. Is there anything else that you notice that might be similar or different from our kelp forest habitat that we were just at? Hmm. Anything that really kind of stands out to you as something that's same or different? I'll give you about 20 seconds to kind of think about it a little bit. Oh, our ocean's very choppy today. All right. So if we go on ahead and we think about it, right? Here we have our marine meadows, and these are going to be grasses that are pretty much more, well, kind of like shorter to the ground, right? And so here we could see another version of that. Not all of the grasses are going to be like, this tall. Some of them will be larger and they'll just kind of sway with the water, kind of like how we saw them sway earlier around. And so these marine meadows are filled with seagrasses, seagrasses right here that you can see. Some of them are maybe a little bit more bushy than others, but they're kind of bunchy and bunch. If you think about like bunch grass on land, it's kind of a similar thing here. It's like a large field of grass, if you will, kind of like on a playground, or it could be more bunchy. And so all of these grasses here are able to kind of provide a habitat or a home for animals such as our fish. Now, if we go on ahead and we think about it, in California, there's not a lot of places where we have this eel grass that we have right here, or surf grass. Those are pretty much the two different varieties, or eel grass or surf grass. And so if you're a type of person that's like, Jen, I really like scientific names, then for you, my friends, that would be Zostra marina as one of them and Philospadix as another. So for those science word-loving folks that are out there, that's going to be the genus, either Zostra or Philospadix. And so as we go on ahead and we look at this, it not only does it look actually different, right? We have like almost like blades of grass here, but there are actually more differences than that between our seagrasses and our actual kelp or seaweed. So let's go on ahead and see if maybe we can kind of break down what some of those differences may be. And now as we go on ahead and look at this, see if it kind of looks similar to maybe what you were thinking. If you're like, Jen, I really don't know, that's okay too. We'll definitely get a chance to go over it. But I just want to give you, a few seconds to just kind of look at this diagram before I step on back into the screen. All right, so what are some things that you notice might be similar or different between our seagrasses right here and our kelp? Stand a little bit to the side right here so you can see it a little better. Actually, I'll step off the screen because I'm cutting off some of the words right there. So, thank you, Sarah. The magic of Sarah. Da-da-da. Right? So here we go on ahead, and there are basically different parts to it. But the interesting thing is there's a lot of parts that look very similar to one another, but actually have very different jobs. So let's go on ahead and break that down a little bit. For our kelp, our algae right here, what they have is something called a holdfast, which kind of looks like roots, but actually are not roots at all. Our holdfast right here does what the name says. It holds fast, it holds down, and it hunkers, basically it holds this algae down onto a rock. So that way when our ocean is swaying back and forth, right, our seaweed basically has somewhere to kind of anchor itself to. So that way it doesn't detach and roll away. So that holdfast is extremely helpful. Now, of course, right, it is an algae and it has to do kind of the same thing as our plants do, which is to photosynthesize, right? To use that sun to be able to get energy for it to grow and to continue to live. And so what it does is it definitely has a little, almost like a stem. It's called a stipe, though, this time, S-T-I-P-E. Excuse me. And along these stipes, we have, instead of leaves, they're called blades. And if you're like, but I see these round little circle parts, those circle parts are actually like gas-filled miniature balloons, if you will. They're basically little pockets of air, and what it does is it helps our kelp to be able to float towards the surface. Do you remember how we were looking at Blue Cavern earlier and we just saw all of that massive seaweed just grow really super tall? And a lot of that has to do, all thanks to all of these little mini balloons, which are actually called nematocysts. And so all these little mini balloons that are attached to these blades help it to be able to float to the surface and float up nice and tall, so that way it's able to get the sunlight that it needs to photosynthesize, to get those sugars to be a happy and healthy algae. Now, our seagrasses, on the other hand, a little bit different. For our seagrasses, they have leaves, right? Just kind of like how grasses are, there are leaves. And these leaves, much like any other like plant, right, especially on land or grasses or anything like that, need to have roots. And what do those roots help a plant to do? Roots. Aha, I think I heard it somewhere, right? It helps it to be able to grab nutrients, vitamins, all that good stuff from the ground and allows it to be used by the plant, right? So our kelp doesn't have any roots, which is pretty wild, right? But our seagrasses do. They have all these roots right here. And what they also do is they have this horizontal stem called a rhizome right here. Boop, it's that larger, chunkier brown line. And what that does is it allows it to be able to have more grass. And believe it or not, grass on land kind of works in a similar way, where all of these sideways kind of rhizomes right here basically are areas where we can have more seagrasses pop up as they go. So what's really cool about this system is it all kind of is like one giant like seagrass mat that is found underneath the sand. We'll talk about why that's important in a little bit. But one of my favorite parts about seagrasses are the flowers. So I think it's so cool getting a chance to actually see a flower underwater in the ocean. You don't normally get a chance to see that. So that's really special about seagrasses is they have, I don't think this picture does it justice, they are beautiful flowers, but it at least gives you an idea, right, of this lovely diagram right here, that seagrasses actually flower, just like plants on land, to be able to get some more seagrasses, right? And so it's a really kind of unique thing of looking at seagrasses, an actual true plant, versus kelp, which is a type of algae. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what parts are kind of similar, right? Blades are kind of similar to leaves. Stipes are kind of similar to the stemmy part of the rhizome right there, right? So there are some similarities between the two, even though it's done in a very different way. And of course, if you have any questions, because I went over that kind of fast, you're always welcome to text them on in or go on ahead and email and be happy to go into more detail about the similarities and differences between kelp and seagrass. All right, so, but if we go on ahead and we think about that seagrass, that marine meadow, right? All of those seagrasses are actually really helpful for these habitats. Now step away for a second so you can get a chance to see. One of the fun things about seagrasses is that you'll have other algae, haha, believe it or not, algae grow on them. Algae doesn't always look like that giant kelp that we saw. Algae can also look like a lot of the fuzzy stuff that is on here too. So that is also like a different kind of algae that is growing on it. So we have algae and seaweed here within our marine meadows. And what are some things that, how do you see our animals kind of using the seagrass? We have a few that are coming by, but how do you notice them using it? Go on ahead, talk to a neighbor if you'd like. That invisible friend, that pet worm again. What do you think? I know for me, something that I'm noticing is that I'm seeing some of these fish kind of move in and around the seagrass, the surf grass, right? Which I think is kind of fun. I could imagine myself as like a little fish just kind of zooming on through all the different blades. I bet it would be a good time, right? But not only are these animals using this seagrass as a type of habitat, but they're also using it for camouflage, right? A lot of these animals are going to be blending in a little bit more to their habitat. They're using it for protection, for food, for having babies, right? And so these are some just general ways in which our animals are using the habitat. And that's really no different than how any animal uses any other habitat, right? Whether it be a coral reef, all of those animals are using all the nooks and crannies of the coral versus our kelp forest or the sandy bottom or any of those other habitats. But what is very special about our seagrasses right here, seagrass beds, is actually a few things that they kind of help not only the animals, but also humans too. So, another thing that they do, which we like to call ecosystem services, it's a way that our environment is helping everyone and everything, is the fact that sometimes the ocean can be a really stormy place, like what we're seeing right here. I'll step off the screen so you can really get the full effect. Wow. And you can also get a chance to see how long some of these seagrasses can get and how seagrasses can also live near a lot of algae, a lot of seaweed too, right? But what's really great about all of these seagrasses is because they are all like one big mat, right? Because of all those rhizomes and those roots, is that it helps it to be able to deal with waves. So if you're living in a coastal community or near the water or near the beach, right? What it does is it helps make sure that the waves, the full force of the waves, actually some of the energy gets back into the seagrass instead. And there's less wave action, less energy and big waves that end up hitting our beaches and our homes. So that's really important that these seagrass beds are really great at basically helping to make sure that there's not too much wave action that is hitting our shores and hitting our beaches, right? So that also helps with erosion, all of that sediment basically staying in here because all of those roots are trapping all of that sediment in, which means that the habitats will stay nice and safe. But it's also really helpful because it helps with biodiversity, or basically it's a fancy way of saying that there's a lot of animals that can kind of hang out in this habitat. So if we're able to kind of keep these habitats safe and pretty much constant, right, the same, then that means that a lot of animals will feel safe to make this home because they know that there will always be food here. They know that there will always be a place to keep them safe, a little hidey spot, right? And also they know the environment, so they know that they could find special areas to be able to lay eggs. There's a lot of great things that really kind of come from these eelgrass, these surf grass beds that really kind of help keep our oceans happy and healthy, believe it or not. All right, friends. But what is really exciting is that here we can't really see too many animals, right? Like I think we saw one orange fish, that Garibaldi, kind of swimming on by. But as we kind of mentioned earlier, we thought about a lot of like land marine meadows, land meadows, and land kind of prairies. A lot of the animals are living in and around the grass, right? So believe it or not, our ocean animals kind of do a similar thing. So let's go on ahead and let's start out with one that you can actually see kind of towards the top, which are going to be our surf perch. Now, these perch are called surf perch mainly because they can kind of surf and move however the water takes them. There they are. And there's a lot of different surf perch varieties. But what's really great about perch overall is the fact that they usually school, which I think is really fun. And they usually will have lots of babies, which I think adds to kind of the larger schools that they have. Surf perch will actually give live birth, which is pretty fun. There's a handful of babies that can actually live in one surf perch mama, and they basically come out like little pancakes. So they're really cute. They're really tiny. They're like this large or so. And surf perch are one of the very few fish, or one of a handful of fish, I should say, that actually gives live birth instead of having it through an egg. But if we go ahead and we look at these surf perch as they get a chance to kind of come on by, what color do you notice that they are? They're kind of silvery, right? Yeah. And so how do you think being kind of silvery and stripy, right, helps them to camouflage in this kind of environment? Any thoughts on that? Well, if we think about being silver, silver is really great at reflecting off of other stuff. And so when you are a skinny silver fish, because it can be tricky to hide amongst all of this grass right here, at least this variety of grass, it really kind of just helps being out in the open water. And so here even though it is quite shallow, right? It's not really super deep like our kelp forest area. All of this is really kind of all the silver is a really great way to be able to camouflage with not really having too many places to hide. So it's a really neat way for some animals to be able to kind of blend in with being a completely different color than their surrounding environment. So I think that's a really kind of unique adaptation or feature that helps our animals to kind of stay alive and to be happy and healthy. But there are other animals that are able to kind of camouflage or blend in their own other way too. Can you think of any other animals that maybe might live in a sandy bottom area or maybe where there might be some other fish? Hmm. Hmm. Well, I can think of some animals that maybe might bury themselves in the sand. One that you can't even see from here would actually be a sand star. hmm So we've been focusing a lot on kind of above the eelgrass, the surf grass, but believe it or not, there are patches of sand that are located underneath here too. And so here we're able to see one such animal right here. Wait a minute, I think there might be more than one. I'm going to step off the screen. How many of these sand stars, these spiny sand stars, can you find? I think I'm seeing 3. Are you seeing 3 as well? There's one here, one there, and then kind of a smaller one back there. Wow. Now, this may not look like your typical sand star, or sea star, I should have to say, because these ones almost look like they're kind of spiny, which is how they got their name, spiny sand star, is that they are able to just kind of blend in with the sand and slowly move around. So, any guesses to why they might have these spines? Well, why might any animal have spines? To protect itself. Exactly. And so as it kind of moves along, and even though it blends in really well with that sand, right, we can see that these sand stars don't move very fast. They are slow moving animals. This is actually sped up by 10 times. I'm joking, it's not. It's actually like regular time, right? And so we're seeing how slowly this sand star moves. Now it's starting to really go. Wow. Make way for that flatfish there. But we're seeing that it just basically kind of lifts itself above the sand and it just kind of moves along, right? And so it has all of these little feet underneath, believe it or not, much like any other kind of sea star, where they have tube feet or feet that help them to move along and even to stick. Now, in this case, our sand stars probably don't need to stick all that much as they're just kind of moving through sand. So they might use it to really kind of bury themselves a little bit more. Oh, we're seeing the small one move too. That's pretty fun, right? And so those 2 feet really kind of allow it to be able to slowly move along and trek across the sand that they have right there. But believe it or not, underneath is actually where their mouth is going to be able to eat a lot of, well, poop. Yep, exactly. They'll go on ahead and they will eat a lot of things that are kind of basically fallen down from the top of the water. If you see all of that kind of specks and stuff like that, that's all kind of decaying or dying plants right there, or algae that's around. And all of these sand stars are kind of great at basically making sure that our environment stays happy and healthy. And so these sand stars will move around and kind of eat things off of the sand. I almost think they're kind of really relaxing to kind of slowly watch them go across. But yet at the same time, I also find them kind of creepy because of how spiny they are. But anyways, let's go on ahead and move on to another wonderful marine meadows animal. And let's go on ahead and focus on that sand dab. We saw a flatfish kind of go on by. And these are some of my favorite fish. I am a huge fan. Look at that fish right there. Isn't it amazing? Da-da-da. You're like, Jen, I really don't see a fish. Let me step off the screen and see if you see it now. Yes, exactly. You can see the eyeball is kind of moving around a little bit right there, right? And so our flatfish right here has some really unique features that help it stay alive, right? Those adaptations. And one of those are, what do you notice? Nice way to enhance, Sarah. Oh, it's the video. I'm going to give you all the credit. Sarah's very modest. All right, there it goes off, right? But here we can go on ahead and see that it really kind of matches the color of the sand, right? And we'll get a chance to see it not only close up a little bit more, but as it kind of moves away, we'll get a chance to really kind of see the shape of our flatfish that much better. But here, right, it's basically the same color as the sand. On the opposite side underneath, it's actually white. It's kind of a cream coloration. Now, why would it be creamy on one side and basically be able to blend in on top on the other side? Any guesses? Well, if no one's going to see the underside of our flatfish friend, except for maybe when it swims every once in a while, right? That basically means it doesn't need to have that energy to be able to put underneath, right? Why make yourself colored on the bottom if you just don't have to, right? You can go on ahead and spend that cool superpower just on top, because believe it or not, friends, it's not always this color. Flatfish have been known to change their colors and patterns basically off of whatever type of thing that they're laying on. So much so that scientists have gone ahead and put a flatfish on like a checkerboard, and that flatfish basically looked like a checkered board without even knowing like how to play checkers or anything like that, or ever seeing a checker pattern, right? Because that's definitely a human thing. And so these flatfish are really kind of masters of camouflage, where they're able to kind of change their color to be able to match the thing that they're laying on, right? Like the sand for this instance. So that's really kind of fun. My other favorite thing about these animals is the fact that they have two eyes on one side of their body. Again, right, they're not doing anything underneath right there. They're spending most of their lives as a pancake on the top part of that pancake, right? And so with that, what they have done over time once they're like baby flatfish is that move when they actually, let me back up. I got too excited there. When they're normal, when they're born, they look like normal fish where they have one eye on each side. And then over time, after a few weeks, one eye will actually migrate or move to the other side. And then you end up having two eyes on one side of the fish. Now, fun fact about these flatfish is that they will actually go on ahead and be more right-sided than left-sided in a way that we are similarly more right-handed than left-handed. It's a similar ratio for humans right-handed, left-handed to right-handed or right-eyed, left-eyed flatfish too. All right, friends. So, flatfish, pretty amazing little fish. Last one that we're going to touch upon is a mystery animal that I'm going to have you try to figure out. Ha 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 ha. Now, friends, at this point, I think many of you are really kind of honing in on those skills of observation, of really kind of getting a chance to find some of those hidden animals within either within the actual grass itself or down in the sand itself. So, last animal, I will give you a hint. It is large, it is round, it is also hidden underneath the sand, because I know we only have a few minutes left. Any guesses to what it might be? Something that's really big, also pancake shaped, that can also be found in the sand, that buries himself. If you're like, Jen, these sandy bottoms are becoming one of my favorite habitats, you're not alone, friend, right? So these sandy bottom habitats, as well as these eelgrass beds or these surf grass beds, right, are really great and really fun and unique habitats for some really cool looking fish. But let's see if we can try to identify one last animal that is located underneath the sand. Do you see it yet? I would look towards the middle. Yeah, here it is. And this is actually our stingray right here. Not ours here at the aquarium, but a stingray. And so that stingray is able to just kind of nestle underneath the sand and remain hidden, right? Great if you're worried about predators, or great if you want to kind of sneak upon your prey or any kind of animal that you want to go on ahead and eat. I don't think that clams and really run that fast, but maybe crabs do, right? And so those stingrays are really great at kind of blending in with the sandy bottom by just basically shuffling their entire bodies underneath the sand, which helps them to kind of sneak and to kind of lay low. Which honestly, sometimes I wouldn't mind doing. Maybe I should visit a sandy bottom habitat more often. All right, friends. Well, unfortunately, our time is up for today. Thank you so very much for joining myself and our stingray friend and my friend Sarah. It's been really great talking to you a little bit about marine meadows. We talked a little bit about why they are important, how they are similar, how seagrasses are similar yet different from algae, what benefits they have not only for ocean animals, for seagrass animals, but also for humans too. And then we had a chance to look at some different kinds of ocean animals like our surf perch, our our spiny sand star, our sand dab, and then last but not least, a little touch upon our stingrays right here. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a great time spending getting a chance to talk to you about seagrasses. We will see you all next time. Have a great and rest of your day. Bye, friends.